What if I told you the Australian government now wants to tax you on money you haven't even made yet?
We've made it clear that these changes are relatively modest, but they're important in the context of the budget, and defined benefit schemes have been appropriately recognised as part of our effort.
The family farm looks like you're going to be paying tax on unrealised gains on intergenerational assets, and it's going to have a huge issue for self-managed super funds as well. So we have grave concerns with this, as does Paul Keating, the grandfather of the superannuation scheme as well. So we're not alone in this being an absolutely abysmal economic policy for young people, for family farmers, for those who have self-managed super funds, and for those in their 20s and 30s whose accounts will be significantly impacted over decades.
So
explain how it works.
It works this way. If the assets in your super fund go up, then the Australian Tax Office, the way the legislation goes, will determine what the capital gain is, and then you'll be hit with a tax of 30 cents on the dollar on that increase.
Even though you don't have that profit?
Even though you haven't got the money, and it's every year. So it is the most insidious tax. It came from Joe Biden, of all people.
Oh, great.
And it was adopted by I call him the snake charmer. And the snake charmer says, oh, this is a great way to get millions out, or trillions out of it.
Taxing people for money they don't have is a pretty dangerous business.
Where the concern is, for some reason the government is talking about taxing unrealised gains. So the theoretical change in the value of your investments that aren't turned into cash and aren't realised. And this is it's really bad tax policy.
Chapter 1. The shocking proposal. The Australian Treasury recently floated a proposal that could change the way wealth, investment, and even small business assets are taxed. The idea? Taxing unrealized capital gains. That means if your house, shares, or assets go up in value, on paper, you could owe tax before you even sell them. This isn't just economic policy, it's a ticking time bomb. Imagine owning a home in a growing suburb. You bought it for $600,000 and now, thanks to market trends, it's worth $900,000. Under the current system, you only pay capital gains tax if and when you sell. But under this new regime, you could be taxed every year based on the rising value, even if you're not making any income from it. Who benefits from this? Not the average homeowner, not the retiree holding onto a modest portfolio. This is a desperate government grasping for revenue in the middle of a budget black hole. Let's be clear, this isn't coming out of nowhere. Australia's debt is ballooning. As of 2025, gross national debt has soared past $900 billion, with projections indicating it could pass the $1 trillion mark by 2026. The pandemic-era spending spree, energy subsidies, aged care blowouts, infrastructure backlogs, and a slow-growing economy have all combined into a perfect storm. Canberra is now scouring every corner of the economy for cash. But instead of cutting waste or reforming corporate loopholes, they're going after savers, retirees, investors, and everyday Australians. Chapter 2. Real people, real consequences. Take Melissa, a 42-year-old single mother in Western Sydney. She bought her home 10 years ago for $520,000. She's been working 2 jobs just to pay the mortgage. Recently, the suburb's property value skyrocketed, pushing her home's worth up to $850,000. Under the proposed unrealized gains tax, Melissa could now be forced to pay thousands in annual taxes, just because the market went up. She doesn't plan to sell. She doesn't have the cash. So what does she do? Go into debt to pay taxes on theoretical money, or sell her home to escape the burden? Then there's Dev, a 66-year-old retiree in Victoria. He's got a small investment portfolio he built over 30 years. It's his retirement cushion. But now, even if he doesn't sell a single share, he could owe thousands to the government just because his portfolio grew on paper. These aren't billionaires. These are hard-working Australians trying to build a future. Chapter 3. The global experiment that failed. Australia wouldn't be the first to try this. In fact, the idea of taxing unrealized gains has been floated and largely rejected in other parts of the world. In the United States, a similar idea was proposed in 2021 by Senator Elizabeth Warren. The public backlash was fierce. Legal scholars called it unconstitutional. Investors threatened capital flight, and ultimately, it went nowhere. Germany explored a similar system but abandoned it after finding it was impossible to fairly administer. Valuations change constantly, asset classes differ wildly, and enforcement becomes a bureaucratic nightmare. Why would Australia now jump headfirst into a policy that has already failed overseas? Let's not sugarcoat this. If Australia introduces a tax on unrealized capital gains, the property market could go into shock. Families who've owned their homes for decades might suddenly owe annual taxes they can't afford. Investors could panic, flooding the market with sales to lock in current gains before taxes hit. Prices could collapse, not due to economic fundamentals, but because of government overreach. Worse yet, this tax would disproportionately hit Sydney and Melbourne residents, where property values are already inflated. First-time buyers would see even less supply on the market, as current owners hold off selling to avoid tax traps. In a nation already gripped by a housing crisis, this could be the final straw. Chapter 4: Small Business Nightmare. It doesn't stop at homes and shares. Small businesses are also in the firing line. Take a small cafe owner whose business property has appreciated. On paper, it's worth more now than when they bought it, but the cafe is barely breaking even. Thanks to rising costs and declining foot traffic, now they could owe taxes on paper gains they can't access unless they sell or remortgage the property. This could devastate tens of thousands of small businesses, the backbone of the Australian economy. Supporters argue that this policy is about making the rich pay their fair share. But let's not kid ourselves. The ultra-wealthy can relocate. They can restructure assets. They can defer, dodge, and dilute. It's middle-income investors, homeowners, and small business owners who get hit hardest. This is wealth redistribution, not from rich to poor, but from the working middle class to government coffers. It's not about fairness. It's about desperation. Chapter 5: Legal and Logistical Chaos. Even if you support the idea in theory, its execution raises impossible questions. How will properties be valued annually? Will shares be taxed on their peak value for the year or end-of-year balance? How will people pay tax on gains that disappear in a market crash the following year? What if someone's net worth rises but they have no liquidity? The legal challenges would be endless, the administrative burden would be massive, and the fairness entirely questionable. So why now? Why this policy at this moment? Because the government is broke. Despite record immigration, high corporate profits, and strong commodity exports, the budget deficit continues to balloon. The tax base isn't keeping up with spending, and instead of shrinking government, they're expanding it. We've seen bloated bureaucracies, cost blowouts on infrastructure, foreign aid commitments, and mismanagement across defense, healthcare, and education. Now, average Australians are being asked to pay the price. Chapter 6: What happens next? Right now, this is only a proposal, but experts warn it's gaining traction in Treasury circles. Public consultation is expected later this year, and if it goes ahead, we could see legislation drafted by 2026. The time to act is now. This isn't a fringe idea anymore. It's quietly being normalized. Petitions are already circulating. Advocacy groups are forming. Financial advisors are warning clients to brace for impact. And average Australians are just beginning to understand what's at stake. Final chapter: Australia's crossroads. There are moments in a nation's story where trust is broken, where government policy crosses a line from taxation into confiscation. This is one of those moments. You don't tax imaginary wealth. You don't penalize people for holding on to assets. You don't crush investment to fill short-term budget holes. This isn't just bad economics, it's morally wrong. And if it passes, it will change Australia forever. The average Aussie already pays some of the highest taxes in the developed world. From income tax to GST, stamp duties to payroll tax. How much more can people take? This is a government at war with aspiration, a war on savings, a war on reward for effort. If we stay silent, they'll call it consent. Subscribe to Outback Crisis to stay ahead of the curve. To understand what else Canberra is doing behind closed doors, watch this video here.